Oh, hello.
In the back, can you hear me all right? I'll go ahead and get started right on time with an introduction and stuff while people still come in. Welcome to this session on exploring an application that we built for a client of ours, which features a combination of Studio, Connect, and FileMaker. My name is Marcelo Pin. I am a technical solutions architect with Soliant Consulting. I've been doing FileMaker development, software development for 20 plus years now. This is what we're going to cover today. I'm going to give you a quick intro of the customer that we built the application for and the application itself. I'll show you a simplified version of the ERD as far as the application is concerned, so hopefully the application itself makes more sense to you when I demo it. Then I'll demo this application and I'll call out how some things work, how some things are implemented. And then I want to open it for questions and discussion. Whether it's, if you guys want to look at how any one feature is implemented, or actually if you have worked with Studio and Connect, I'm curious to know what your reaction to this app is and hear your experience too. Okay? So we'll dive right in. The app in question we built for the School of Dentistry at the University of Chicago, Illinois, which I'll refer to by its acronym UIC. Specifically, we built it for the continuing education or CE department there. And so they use it to manage their events or activities. Things like conferences, symposiums, some kind of course, okay? So we have, in terms of entities, we have an activity, which, like I said, can be some kind of course, workshop, symposium, etc. There are faculty members, and for any one activity, one or more faculty members may be involved. So that's why we have that activity faculty join table, yeah? Some faculty are members of what they call an approvals committee. So when an activity is proposed, the members of the approvals committee have to review the proposals. And either they approve them or they reject them. So those approvals or rejections we capture in the approval table, which is another join table. Then we have a child table, which is learning objectives. Each activity needs to have a few learning objectives. And an activity can have a parent activity. Like, for instance, if we were using this application to manage this event, this session would be a child to a parent activity record that would be the conference itself. Make sense? Let's actually look at the application. For that, I have the screen recording that I'm going to talk over to explain, to demo it. So what we're looking at here is the detail view for an activity in the FileMaker application. On the bottom section, we have panels with portals into those related tables, activity faculty, there are the learning objectives, activity, the approvals. This activity doesn't have any parent or child. It's an independent or standalone event. And I want to call out that there are currently 476 records. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to log into the Studio application. I'm going to pause that for a moment, as if I was a faculty member. You can see that I'm actually taken to the University of Illinois, Chicago Microsoft Entra login page. Okay, I thought maybe there was a question. And I'm logging in as one of their faculty. So I have external authentication set up in Studio. That's one of the big features in Studio. I don't have to recreate accounts for all faculty members in Studio. Don't have to mess with updating, managing passwords, multi-factor authentication. The accounts stay where they belong. The Microsoft Entra instance that UIC already has set up, that's a better situation for UIC's IT department, for me as a developer, and for the users that don't have to manage yet another password. This is what I see when I first log in. That's, doesn't come across all that well, I guess. It's very faint. But this is what's called a spreadsheet object in this custom view that we're looking at. It's empty now because it's filtered by the activities that the logged in user has created. I haven't created any yet, and that's why we're not seeing any. But we're going to create one now.
So is the faculty that create the activity?
Yes.
There is no other one that can create?
The question was, is only the faculty member that creates the activity? That's typically how it works. There is a role for this, the CE, Continuing Education Coordinator. That person could, but typically it is a faculty member saying, this is my idea for a workshop, a conference, and I'm submitting a proposal. I chose to keep things simple for the demo, independent or standalone event. And so that record was created, and I want to call out your attention to the fact that so one thing you can do in Studio when you create a record is you can specify the default value for some fields. So I'm using that feature to automatically set the status of the activity to draft. Okay? So for now, this is just a draft. Once I select the row, I see all of the elements in the view, and I'm giving you here a first look at that, what that looks like. You can see there are actually some related data spreadsheet objects. So that's what the form looks like. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm changing the type of activity now. So when I make it a conference, I don't see those spreadsheet objects. And vice versa, when I select lecture, I see the spreadsheet objects, but I don't see most of the fields. So in Studio, you can apply a visibility condition to the objects on a custom view, which and the condition is formulas that I am using in Studio. Here I'm filling out some more information for the form. And if we switch to FileMaker, now we have 477 records. So the record was created right away in FileMaker. The way that worked is Connect has a trigger for when a record is created in Studio, which triggers a flow in Connect that creates a record in FileMaker. And the reason we implemented it this way, even though it hasn't been submitted yet, is that it gives the CE coordinator a heads up. Such and such is working on a draft for an activity proposal. What I want to show you next is these spreadsheet objects in action. So when I press the plus button, it launches this. It's a picker. It's going to show us all of the faculty records, all of the records in the faculty table. I can search, and I'm going to select this faculty to associate with the activity. I can choose to only show the ones that are selected. The other thing that I can do is create a new record on the fly. So the use case here is I'm a UIC faculty member. I want to organize an activity, and I'm going to have a visiting scholar from the University of Ghent. Okay? That person isn't in the UIC faculty table, so I'll create a new record for them on the fly here. And there you see the result. We created a new record, and these two are faculty members that are associated with the activity. In the spreadsheet object, I can also search, I can sort. Spreadsheet objects are one of my favorite features in Studio because they have so much functionality, right? And I'll pause this here for a moment. Compare that to how long it would take to do all of that in FileMaker. So to create a portal that is searchable, that you can sort by any of the columns, creating a picker to choose the faculty, create the faculty on the fly. I didn't code any of this. I just added the spreadsheet object and selected some configuration options. It can be, so this is one example in which Studio can be a big time saver. Here, notice, I selected that dental specialist, and only when I selected dental specialist, we saw that other field appear. This is another way in which I'm using visibility conditions. You can point it to, or you can base the formula on the value of a given field. Here, I'm creating learning objectives. I'm demonstrating a different way of creating records. Here, we're not using a picker or a pop-up. We're creating them directly in the spreadsheet object. And I was actually struggling a little bit with clicking on properly, starting a new record. And I left that in the recording just to show you that sometimes some things can be a little clunky in Studio. So I didn't show you an unrealistic view of Studio. At this point, I want to call out that we're going to submit the form. But I could actually log out here. Studio has been saving all of the data that I've been entering, which is great. So this is not a form view for anonymous users to use. I'm logged in. It's a custom view where we created the record. It also exists in FileMaker now. So the data is saved. So I could log out and then come back and finish working on the form later. But we're going to submit it. And I want you to notice what happens. Yes, John?
So just how are you saving? So you say to everybody, oh, it's being saved as you go along. How are you saving it as you go along?
Say that again? How am I?
How are you saving it as you go along?
It's easy. Yes. The question is, how am I saving the changes as the person inputs the data? That's one of my favorite parts too. I don't do anything, Studio does it. It's just saving it automatically. Because it's a record in a custom view, not a form view for an anonymous user. Notice what happens when I press the submit button. The submit button goes away, I get a different text there, and now all of my fields, spreadsheet objects are read-only. I can't change them anymore. Let's go over what happened there. So, buttons in Studio can trigger an action. In this case, the action was set a field value. So the status field that was draft before, remember? We change it to proposed. Much like we can apply visibility conditions to objects, we can also apply a read-only, or we can determine the read-only status. So I can change the status, the read-only aspect of an object, from being read-only to not read-only, also based on a formula. And in this case, we're using a formula that looks at the status field. Does that make sense? And there is a connect trigger which looks at, you can make the trigger be if this specific field in a table in Studio changed the value, execute a flow. So that's what I did. There is a connect flow that is looking for, did the status field value change? It changed here, and that triggered the flow that pushed the data to FileMaker. So you're seeing here the data that we entered in Studio. That includes our, activity faculty, join table records, our learning objectives, child records. We don't yet have approvals. We'll get there. Now, let's say I forgot to include some information. So the C coordinator who uses FileMaker can change the status in FileMaker back to draft. And they can let me know, hey, I need you to enter some more information. How did I implement that? So I created a webhook in Connect, which is very simple to do. The webhook is simply a URL that then we can call. And I'm calling it using insert from URL script step in FileMaker. Much like I would call any API endpoint. If you've done any API integration, this webhook in Connect that I'm calling is just like calling an API endpoint. And I'm passing it a JSON structure that contains the status that I want the status field in Studio to be set to. Yeah? Once the status of the Studio record is changed to draft, now as the faculty member, I'm able to edit the form again. Or I should say this custom view. And I'm just going to enter a couple pieces of information for demonstration purposes, and I'll resubmit the form. And you can see the status change back to propose, and we have those pieces of information. This is happening right away because we're using Connect. Now, what happens now is once the CE coordinator has all of the information that they need for the activity proposal, they change the status to under review. That's what allows the members of that approvals committee that I mentioned before, now it's their time to review the proposal. And what I was pointing out in the recording where the hand is, there is no button there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a different browser where I'm logged in as a different user who is a member of the approvals committee. The user that I was logged in with before wasn't. That's why I didn't see that button. So we can specify visibility conditions that are based on, in this case, the formula goes along the lines of, I'm logged in as mjpinay at uic.edu. Do I have a faculty record with that email address who are they a member of the approvals committee? If they are not, I hide the button. If they are, I display the button. And then clicking that button also took us to this other custom view, which has a spreadsheet object, and when I select the activity record, I see all that information that was submitted, but in read-only form. They don't need to change anything. They just have to review it. And here I'm going to demonstrate another way of creating a related record in FileMaker in Studio, which is via a button action that is create related record. So I'm capturing my approval for this activity. And now we have a record in the Studio approval table. And also, I used another Connect flow to push the data to FileMaker. And there is that approval record. Another thing, one of the things that Connect flow does, in addition to just pushing the record, is it sets the appropriate foreign keys so that when it comes into FileMaker, into the approval table, it actually knows that it has a foreign key for activity and the foreign key for faculty. And that is the end of the demo. I'd like to open it now for questions, comments. Who wants to get us started? Actually, okay, you got the mic,
sorry.
Great.
Sorry. I'm very interested. My first question is regarding why you use Connect. Because as far as I understood, you can connect directly Studio to FileMaker. So why to put this internet? Is only for the webhooks?
So why use Connect instead of, I could create a data source in FileMaker looking at Studio. One disadvantage of that approach is that you don't have the live or the real-time aspect that Connect gives you. So if I establish a data source in FileMaker pointing to Studio, I would have to constantly query, did I get a new record? Did the value of this field change? So it wouldn't be a real-time implementation. It would be asynchronous, it would be on a schedule. With Connect, the moment something happens in Studio, I can execute a flow. So it's real-time. That is one advantage. There is a third way that I could be pushing data back and forth, and that is creating a data source in Studio. That's a newer feature, was released around summertime this year, a few months ago. That is an easy, quick way of establishing a two-way, quote-unquote, sync of data. But it has some limitations. One of them is that it doesn't really know anything about related data. It's just going to sync individual tables. By using Connect, I can actually effectively relate the data in a way that then when it's pushed to FileMaker, it's understood by FileMaker as related data.
And the second question is, I think this kind of application can be done only in FileMaker, using only FileMaker. That is possible. What is the advantage of using Studio and Connect? Because it creates, in my opinion, a level of complexity on working with 3 different applications.
Fair. You have more elements in your technology stack to keep track of. You could develop something like this using FileMaker and then deploy it using WebDirect. It could be a mobile application. You could try to use Pro. One of the big benefits of Studio is that it's a native web application. So it's going to offer a better experience for your users. It's going to feel native. And in this case, I guess I didn't demo this, but some of the faculty members would want to use this in their tablets, and also on their desktops. If you do that, if you were to build this application in FileMaker, you would need to have separate layouts for different devices, right? Studio as a native web application, or the views that we create in it, which are native web apps, are responsive. So we can just leverage that inherent functionality in the product. And then, whereas, yeah, you are adding more elements to your technology stack, like I mentioned, a lot of things we get for free. So we don't have to implement in FileMaker. Those would be some of the reasons. I think there are more reasons. One would
is the
choose
number
Studio.
of license, because of course, if you are in FileMaker, you need a license for each user.
Yeah.
Where in Studio, in reality, you don't need a license for a user, but only for the, I don't know how they call it, anyhow, the number of, what do they call it?
Well, there are users also in Studio, and actually UIC is a good case of that. There are faculty members that might submit a proposal once a year, once every 2 years. Those sporadic users don't count towards the licensed users. That's a big advantage too, yes.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Werner. I'm the guy from the Provincial Parks. We've been playing around with the Studio and Connect and FileMaker, and we encountered one big problem, and you've used the words back and forth and bidirectional. We haven't managed to get that going. We can get it from Studio to FileMaker, but once we make changes in FileMaker, we don't get them back into Studio. By the way, the working with the custom views in the form, I find that also very interesting. It seems to give you a lot of possibilities. But my question now is, how did you manage to get the back and forth or the bidirectional thing to work?
Mm-hmm. So it's all driven by Connect flows. So let me show you a couple of examples of data flow in each way. Let's go with a simple one for just creating a new activity record. Let's see, the entire thing fits in the screen now. This is a nice thing about Connect flows have, the first step in a flow is always a trigger. What's going to trigger that flow? And that's, a new record was created in the activity table. Okay? And then I have a lot of error trapping steps in this flow. I do that in all of my flows. Why is it not collapsing? I'll just save it. Well, this is something I had to do before because we didn't have the ability to set a UUID in Studio. So before I was using Connect to do that, to generate one, and then I was setting a UUID field in the activity table. This is no longer necessary because now you can just specify a field in Studio to be the result of the get UUID formula. That was a parenthesis there. Really what matters here is, and then I just use, this is a FileMaker connector action to actually send the data to FileMaker. I'm using there are two actions, there's create record and advanced create record. I'm using the advanced one here so I can set records in FileMaker using a JSON structure. Okay, so the name of the JSON property is the name of the FileMaker field. And this, so if you haven't played with Connect much, this is referencing a UUID value from step 2. And step, well, is where I generated the UUID. You can always reference information, data, from previous steps. So I'm just referencing mostly the studio data in step 1. So if I wanted to keep things real simple here, I would only need 1 and 7. When a new record is created in Studio, I use a FileMaker connector action to create the record in FileMaker. I'm just doing error trapping. If there are any errors, I capture them in a log table in Studio. I can switch to how we push data from FileMaker to Studio, unless there are any questions on this one. So if you haven't played with webhooks, let me just actually do that now. EngageU demo. I'm creating a new webhook. It's taking a moment. Let me show you, let me expose this one. When you create a new webhook, you just get a URL. And then you can choose whether to require authentication when you call that webhook or not, and whether you want the webhook to return an HTTP response or not. Or I should say a custom HTTP response or not. So once I have this URL, I'm not sure why they didn't create it right away, but I'm gonna go back to the flows. And what you say, the trigger is an incoming HTTP request. So if FileMaker or anything makes a call to the URL that we specified in the webhook, execute this flow. And I know we're just out of time here, but you can create variables in Connect, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm parsing from the URL the verb. So in this case, I'm looking for a patch. We usually use post or get, but you can do patch, amongst other verbs. I'm getting the ID of the activity, and then I'm making sure that I can find the record in the Studio table. If there is an error, I error out. If I found 0, if I found more than 1, say, I also error out. And then I use a Studio connector action to actually update the record. Did that make sense? Any additional questions on that? Joris.
So Marcelo, you're doing your own syncing, but we now have those new FileMaker data sources in Studio, which are supposed to go bidirectional as well. Are you explicitly avoiding them for a particular reason?
Am I avoiding what?
The FileMaker data source in Studio.
In Studio. Well, I built this before, much of this, I built it before that was available, but I would still use Connect today. So before I mention one limitation of this new feature that is creating a data source in Studio, looking at a FileMaker table, is that you can't do much with related data. I have found, well, one consideration is if you create records in Studio and your FileMaker server is down for whatever reason, the records that are created in Studio will fail to be pushed to FileMaker. And then what happens is when FileMaker server is back, and whenever you trigger the sync, the records that are in Studio but fail to be pushed to FileMaker, they will be deleted, they will be lost because they never made it into FileMaker. And FileMaker is always the source of truth for this new feature. So if that's something that is okay for you, for your client, you can still use it and take advantage of how easy it is to establish a data source. But that's one consideration. Another one is you can add fields in Studio to a FileMaker data source table. And I found that if I add a calculation field, it breaks actually in the sync. So I think it's the first iteration of data sources that we have today. I have more flexibility, and I think I can ensure more data integrity if I use Connect. Yeah. I think we'll go to that gentleman there first.
Thank you. Just one more general question. Did you have any difficulties implementing the UI by style guides from your client, or was it an easy to go and you had just some CSS thrown at it and everything worked out fine?
You know, I actually didn't implement the UI. I had our client do it. No, actually, seriously. So that was a way that they saved some time, some money. I mean, it's easy enough that you can have a non-developer work on the UI in Studio. It is, let me say this, there are Studio, I mentioned before, there are some things that are a little clunky. It's a little idiosyncratic. There are some things that aren't as smooth as they could be. So when you're working with objects on, I can try to demonstrate this. Let's say I'm going to try to, this is a copy of the view that we're looking at, and we're in developer mode. So I'm going to click and hold down on that text block object, and I'm going to try to move it up. Okay, I just moved it a little bit. I actually wanted to put it between between the continuing education block and general information, but it went further up than I wanted. I'm going to try to put it right in between. Okay, this is one thing that it's not as smooth as I like. We didn't have a lot of requirements in terms of styling, so the options in Studio were more than sufficient for what this client needed in terms of what the view needed to look like. Those are a couple thoughts there. Was there another question?
If you say that if the server is down, with Connect, it's correct that when a server going up, update all the new records?
Well, if the server is down, Connect is going to fail too, but
yeah,
at least I know about it. So currently, if you're using a Studio data source, there is no feedback to the user that something failed, and there is no obvious feedback to me as a developer. Yes, I can go and look in the FileMaker server logs and I'll see the failures, but it fails silently. And then I don't have an easy way, at least, of tapping into those failed attempts and re-triggering them, or at least seeing what failed so I can actually recreate that data in FileMaker. With Connect, Connect does have built-in retries. It's 4 or 5. It tries. If it fails, then it tries again after 2 minutes. Then I think it's like something like 30 minutes, 2 hours, 8 hours, something like that, for a total of like 11 hours. But I also, so let me show you this call logger actions here is when an error occurs, I build a JSON object that represents the error that occurred. So I'm capturing the HTTP status code, message. The hint is think of it as my custom error message. And whatever the HTTP response body was. And I log this. The way this works is I'm calling a webhook that I created in Connect, and I'm just making a call with a body that is that JSON structure. And all that flow does is my logger flow. It receives an incoming HTTP request, and it creates a record in a table in Studio. I also have it send me an email because I want to know right away if an error occurred. But I have a record, a full log of any errors. So I could use that to then push that data to FileMaker for any failures that occurred.
So at the end, it's Connect that manages the failures. Studio is not able to manage the failures. Maybe it is unable to write directly because you have the tables, the Studio tables in FileMaker. You can see the Studio table in FileMaker. It's correct.
You can if you add a data source to it in FileMaker.
Yes, in FileMaker. So the fact that if Studio is unable to write to FileMaker, it should be extracting an error at the moment, at that time. I don't know, it's a question.
It gets logged if we're going back to, if you're using a data source in Studio, looking at FileMaker, errors are logged in the FileMaker server log, but there is no immediate notification or alert to the user, to the developer that automated sync failed. Wrap it up? Yeah. Okay. I think we'll pass our time. I appreciate your interest in it and the follow-up questions. Come up to the podium or catch me later if you have any additional questions or want to discuss this any longer. Thank you very much for your attendance.